Hello, my friends. I'm on a quest to be the most prolific reviewer of all time, and to do that, I review books, movies, plays, podcasts, and computer games and music, but mostly it's movies. And one genre of movie that I really, fiction, not fiction, one genre of media that I really like is true crime, podcasts, documentaries, whatever. And so I watched a documentary yesterday from 2025 called Predators. And Predators is a documentary about, it's not the sequel to Predator, so don't get confused about that. I think the sequel to Predator is called Predators. That would make sense. But anyway, this is Predators. It's a documentary about the and I thought that it was its own show, but it was actually just part of Dateline NBC called the series called To Catch a Predator. Uh, and I thought that it was like a real reality show with Chris Hansen, and that they would have like talking. I don't think I've actually ever seen an episode of it, but the premise is that they would basically catfish a person who thought that they were talking to somebody underage, and then they would entrap the person to go to some place, and then Chris Hansen and the camera crew would jump out, and they'd have like this kind of like interview, and it lasted not very long, like three years. And again, it's not an actual show, it's like a special from NBC. And then Chris Hansen went on to do like a couple of shows connected to the same theme. And now there are a lot of kind of copycats. And some of the copycats are basically just people entrapping other people and then yelling at them in public and trying to shame them. So this documentary kind of examines the whole genre. And I don't know how I feel about it because I think that there are some problems with the genre for sure. The it is kind of making people suffering into entertainment, and on the one hand, it is exactly that. It's making people suffering into entertainment, but where you have something like Jerry Springer, and it's sort of just it's not it's just like watching car crashes, right? And the people suffering, they might just have your life but be a different social stratus from you. But in this, uh, To Catch a Predator, they might be the point is not like the what they did is 100% morally and ethically unjustifiable, right? You know, so the the whole point of this documentary is like, is it right to show people at their worst point? And I think that you could make a lot. You could use other examples in media to make your point, like you know, like the Jerry Springer show. And I think what's problem, and so I think that that's the first part. And the second part is there is a huge question that the documentary asks, and it asks these shows to answer the question, but it doesn't actually attempt to provide its own answer itself. So it's basically doing the crime that it's accusing these shows of. And the question is like, why do these people do it? Right? Why? Why do they do it? And Chris Hansen is more focused on like, this is a crime and it should be punished. And the maker of this documentary, uh, what is his name? I guess he. um, David Olsit. Yeah, he doesn't answer that question either. And I think that it's a question that I'm not sure people are. I don't think that we're in an age where we can actually talk about it honestly and objectively, because I think it's a taboo. It's a taboo for a reason. But there are men, and I'm sure women, who struggle with this. So there's men and women who struggle with this attraction to younger people. And then there are people who are attracted to people who are like older but look, oh, who are younger but look older, kind of thing. And so the documentary doesn't examine like that whole thing. And the other part is, what is the best treatment for those people? Because I don't think that it's just a simple, like, obviously you can't let them act out their fantasies in reality, because that is dangerous and hurtful to people. And but uh, for example, there's a big question of, a lot of people, maybe not a lot of people, but people with these inclinations are using AI to create things, pornography that satisfies their desires. And the question is that wrong, actually? Because if they're just stay strictly in the realm of fantasy, then maybe it's okay. But maybe those people need help. I don't know. I don't know. And I don't think that but I think when you say those people need help, there's like this gut reaction of like, oh, they should be in jail or they should be shot. And, I think that's kind of like, if you know of a person who has those inclinations, if you are a person who has those inclinations and you hear all of that, why are you going to get help? You're not going to get help in our current society, because I don't even know. Like, if you look at the services psychologists offer, I've never seen anybody who treats people with that problem. And I think the, so the people who have those inclinations themselves, they are not going to seek help. And so they're either going to keep it in their fantasy world, or they're going to try and enact their fantasies in real life, which is very, very dangerous. So, and I think, maybe to make myself clear, I think the problem is we can't have a conversation about this topic, because people are, they have really, really strong feelings and about it, which is understandable, but they don't separate their feelings from, you know, situations that have nothing to do with them. Uh, and by which I mean this hypothetical person who has those inclinations and has never done anything, because there are people who have uh, other kind of sexual fantasies, where those fantasies stay in the realm of fantasy, and they're never, you know like, I'm sure there are people who, I don't know, want to have sex with aliens, for example, and they're never going to have sex with aliens because aliens don't exist. So the problem, though, is that children and minors exist. So it's a lot more dangerous. So I do think that there needs to be a bigger conversation about this topic, and I don't think our society is ready to have that conversation. And my YouTube, like, I'm a very small YouTuber, and I have a very small channel, but I don't think that this video is gonna have much traction whatsoever. But if it does, then I can 100% see what the comments would be like. Oh, you think that pedophiles can go walk around um, without any consequences? And I think that there's another part of it that I just thought about. So there is this YouTuber whose movie criticisms I actually quite enjoy, but he's like very, very right wing in all of his ideology. And he equates being gay with pedophilia all the time. So we use pedophilia in our society as kind of like a weapon. So the people we don't like are pedophiles, basically, because it's like the last taboo. And it should be a taboo. I'm not saying that it shouldn't be. But, you know, so clearly somebody like Trump and Epstein are probably actually pedophiles. But the Democrats have also been accused of being pedophiles, right? And the the worst thing that you can say, the last taboo in American politics is that somebody is a pedophile, right? And it should be a taboo. I'm not saying that being a pedophile is a great thing. You shouldn't be a president or prime minister or even like any kind of person in power if you are a pedophile. Like you shouldn't. You should be in treatment or in prison if you've actually acted out your interests. So I think that that's one discourse is like the the actual honest discussion about that is politicized and it's used by different political ideologies to further their ideology. And being gay and being a pedophile are completely different things. They're not connected whatsoever. And for you to connect them, that's what you're doing. That's your platform against being gay. It has nothing to do with how you feel about pedophilia, right? I mean, but but then it doesn't actually solve the problem, and that's the thing. Ideology rarely solves any problems. So the ideology that everybody has about pedophilia doesn't actually prevent it. And I think it should, you know. And maybe we just register these people, give them an AI bot, and say, you can't work with children, you know. And that's another civil rights thing. Like, how can you prevent somebody from working with children if they've never committed a crime? Well, you don't want them to commit a crime, right? And so, like, there's lots of these, like, really deep philosophical questions. So, if we want people to get treated, we need to have more open conversations about it. But then when they go to get treated, we can't just say like, "Oh yeah, it's fine, just live your life." You can't do that. So it's really, really complicated, and I think like this documentary asks questions, but it doesn't, present any answers, unfortunately. And I think like I want to be clear though, the documentary kind of focuses on a few cases where, so for example, there was a DA, a district attorney in the United States, and he was entrapped by this. I'm saying entrapment. I don't think it's the legal term of entrapment, right? Because entrapment is you are enticed to do something that you wouldn't normally do by the police. And the idea is that if you've been doing this with one kid, you've been doing it with multiple kids. So there's this DA who talks to their bait actors, and he is supposed to go to this house, and he doesn't go to the house. So the police and the production go to him, and as the police are entering, then he shoots himself. And the production says like, this is a television the documentary says this is a television production, why are they working with the police? Well, they're working with the police because the police don't have the resources to perform this kind of investigation. And it's tragic that the guy died, but he dies, and then there's no investigation of any of his other potential crimes that he's committed. So I don't think that he's necessarily innocent just because he committed suicide. And I don't think it's a tragedy that he committed suicide, you know, because if he had really legitimately not done anything, and I know this is always the argument like about privacy, like if you don't have anything to hide, why are you worried about privacy? So, but still, this guy is a potential predator, right? So maybe he should have been charged, right? And there should have been a trial. And then there's another case of somebody who was 18 and he was sending messages to somebody who was younger. And unfortunately, I didn't really pay attention to the age of the person, so they didn't say it again in the documentary. But like the person turned 18 and they were talking to a 14-year-old or something like that. And again, the movie wants to make it this big. The documentary wants to say, okay, the show ruined his life because 18-year-olds date 14-year-olds all the time. And no, 18-year-olds don't date 14-year-olds all the time. There's a huge leap in development from 14 to 18. And should they be prosecuted like adults because technically they're adults? Maybe not, but that's not the question that's answered. The guy did commit a crime, right, as an adult. So he had the consequences of that. Like, I remember there was a guy. Never mind. That's a personal story. But we all know people who were dating people when we were teenagers who were far too young, and everyone knew it. So it's not an okay thing. Is it classic pedophilia? Probably not. But that's why this discussion has a lot of nuance. And unfortunately, I think that's my point, is that this word pedophilia is like a red flag. And because it's a red flag, people are not thinking, a red flag or maybe a red rag to a bull. So when you say that word, people stop thinking because they have personal experiences, you know, and they want the evildoer to be punished. And I think if you do evil, you should be punished. I'm not saying you shouldn't. You should be punished. But maybe there is a way that we can identify the evildoers before they actually become evildoers and give them treatment. And as I said, some AI bot to fulfill their fantasies so they're not actually harming real people. Yeah, a difficult conversation, but what did you think? If you've seen this movie, yeah, so I guess my conclusion is I don't buy the premise of this. I think, yes, they used these men for entertainment purposes, but these men committed at least one crime. And this show probably stopped them from committing more. So I don't have any problem with To Catch a Predator. But what do you think? I was laughing, but that was more of a nervous laugh, not that anything that I'm saying or the topic is funny. All right. If you have some thoughts, put your thoughts in the comment section. And if you like what I do, please subscribe. I'm looking for 500 subscribers by the end of March. And if you're listening on Spotify, please give me a follow. Thank you. Bye-bye.